Hello, friends. Thank you for joining me again. So there's been a lot of new subscribers to my channel. A lot of people have been watching some of my videos, especially the Becoming Catholic series seems to be pretty popular. So if you haven't seen that, check it out. I'll try to link to it. There's an entire playlist. I just wanted to do a bit of an impromptu video here on something that just happened to me. And it has to do with the Divine Mercy and specifically the Divine Mercy image. So I've been doing this. I just started this yesterday. I haven't made any commitments to it. But I've been doing this thing called, I'm calling it the 15-day, 15-decade rosary challenge. And so the challenge is to, for whatever works within your schedule, but for, let's say, 10 hours a day, every hour on the hour, you pray either 1 or 2 decades of the rosary. So with the first hour, you pray 1 decade. The second hour, you pray 2 decades. The third hour, you pray 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, or something like that. You can kind of change it up a bit. Maybe one of those hours you want to pray 3 decades, and then the next 2 hours you pray 1 decade at the start of each hour. So if you want to try that out, if you're struggling with the rosary or whatever, that might be a good challenge for you to try. Again, I haven't made any commitments to doing that. But that's why you call it a challenge, right? It wouldn't be called a challenge if it was like, I'm definitely going to do it. The challenge is to complete it, right? And so, for 15 days, because, 15 decades, you pray 15 decades a day, right? So I decided the other day that I was going to try this out. And I could get into where that sort of idea came from. I actually will get into that idea, I think, just a little bit here, because I think the reasoning behind it is kind of, it might be helpful to some people. So anyway, one thing I like to do is sometimes go on a walk and say the rosary while I'm walking. And I was doing that the other day, and it was a very beautiful day out, and I was really having a really hard time focusing my mind on the mysteries, and my mind would just continually wander. I probably had to say, I said well over 53 Ave Marias in that rosary. Let's just say that, because my mind just kept, like, not even on purpose. I would just go to a new bead and start thinking about a new thought on, the mystery. And my mind would just, wander off. And then sometimes I'd have to pray a bead 3 times just to have been meditating on a particular thought of the rosary, right? And I was thinking about this, and I realized that that wasn't necessarily such a bad thing. Because there's that sort of like guilt I might get sometimes or whatever. But, obviously you can't, if your mind's doing this involuntarily, which it was for me, I'm actually trying to focus on the mysteries. But, my mind sort of does this involuntarily, right? And if you've watched my channel at all, again, ADHD, it's just going to happen. And that'll happen to normal people as well, right? But what I realized is it's like I pictured like drawers or whatever, right? And in every other drawer, like drawers in my mind, drawers of thoughts, and in every other sort of thought, I was putting, thoughts of Christ and, the saints and everything like that in every other drawer. And so I thought that was kind of neat, because at first I was viewing this as like, what's wrong with me? Why can't I just do this correctly. Oh, I'm so sick of not focusing my mind. And then it's almost as if, and again, I don't want to make this claim, but I just felt this like sort of prompting. I mean, when I say make this claim, I mean I don't want to make the claim that I was spoken to by God. I just felt this sort of prompting, this intuition that just came in like that. And I usually take that to be, either from God or from, Mary. Actually, that time I thought it was from Mary, who's just kind of saying to me, hey, this is what's happening. This isn't a bad thing. What you're doing is, it's like you're opening up these different drawers in your mind, and you're putting, thoughts of Christ and of me and of God. Christ is God, but, of God into your mind. And, where they weren't there before, right? And so I thought that was kind of interesting. And then, later that day, I think it was that day, or maybe it was the next day, I was in the shower, and, sometimes I'll say a decade of the rosary in the shower, not very often, but every once in a while. So I was doing that in the shower. I was just saying a decade of the rosary, and, I realized how easy it is to say a decade of the rosary while you're doing something else. Now, again, you might have to repeat a few prayers or whatever. And I thought to myself, hey, you could say a decade of the rosary every hour on the hour, unless, let's say you had to use your mind for work and you couldn't take 4 or 5 minutes every hour to say a decade. When I say use your mind, I mean, like, if you're doing like engineering or something like that, or you're an architect or an accountant, saying a decade of the rosary and meditating on the mysteries is going to be really hard, when you're having to focus your mind on, meditate on other things, right? Whereas, let's say if you're a carpenter or something like that, depending on the specific type of work you're doing at that moment, you could, if you're, let's say, like I did carpentry for a while, let's say if you're just, cutting some wood or whatever, you can say a decade while you're cutting the wood. Now, you have to make sure that you're measuring properly and everything like that. You don't want to start screwing your work up because you want to do this sort of challenge. But I thought about that, and I was like, it would be very doable to just, every hour on the hour. And that's kind of where I got the idea. And then I was like, okay, so do you 15 hours a day? That might be a bit much, I don't know, right? So then I was like, well, if you did 10 hours, yeah. And then I got the system that I came up with, 10 hours or whatever. And so, yeah, I would encourage you, if you want to try that out, if you want to give that a go, if you want to take on the challenge, and maybe you decide to go past 15 days, maybe you get 3 days in and whatever. So, I mean, we're supposed to be saying a rosary every day. If you can get 3 in a day, I once heard a priest say that if you want to go to heaven right when you die, the surefire way to do it is say 3 rosaries a day. I don't know if that's true. I've heard a priest say that before. So yeah. Anyways, I was doing this challenge, and I was on a walk. This is today. This is a few hours ago or whatever. Not that long ago, and I was on a walk, and I finished. Yeah, when I was on the walk, I did 3 decades just because I'm on the walk, and I was like, just being really inspired, in my head about Christ. I started writing a little poem in my head about Christ, actually, and I haven't finished it anywhere near. I only have a few lines here, but I could read it for you right now. It's just kind of interesting. It says, "O merciful Master, my kind and loving Lord, you pay for me a debt that I cannot afford. I want to do your will. Please bind my heart to yours." And then that's kind of as far as I got. But, I was like, oh yeah. And then I was having all of these other thoughts. And then I was thinking on God's mercy and everything like that, and Christ's mercy. That this thing of mercy just kept coming back to me. Mercy, mercy, mercy. And then I get back from my walk, and, lo and behold, the hour's almost over. So I'm going to have to start another decade just because I was on such a long walk, right? And then when I go to pray the next decade at the next hour, I start praying it, and I get this image in my head. And it's of the divine mercy image. Now, I saw this image last night. And again, I don't know much about this entire divine mercy thing. I've heard of the divine mercy chaplet before, and I've seen the divine mercy image last night. I actually saw the image before, but I didn't know that that's what it was. And as I'm praying this decade, I'm getting this image of the divine mercy image in my head, and it's making me emotional, right? It's making me like, I'm like, wow, this is so beautiful, right? And I'm like, I finished praying the decade. I finished, it was actually right at the end of one rosary, and so I finished that off. And then after that, what happened was I started praying this prayer over and over and over, which was, I love you, O Lord, I love you, and I accept your mercy. I love you, O Lord, I love you, and I accept your mercy. I love you, O Lord, I love you, and I accept your mercy. And I did kind of like a small sort of chaplet, or no, what is that called? Yeah, a chaplet, right? That's where you go through the rosary and say like different prayers other than the Ave Maria. I think, that's called a chaplet, right? Anyway, so I go through this sort of chaplet with the Divine Mercy image just in my head. Like, that's all I'm thinking about. And I'm just like getting this real sense of what God's mercy is. And then I realized about myself something I had been doing, which is that I had been not really embracing, not believing that Christ could have mercy on me. And it really struck me. It really got to me. And, I was, you should have sorrow over your sin. I think that's true. We need to have sorrow over our sin. But we can't have despair. And so that really started to there's just like this thing that was just like, hey, you have this and you need to embrace Christ's mercy. So then I went and looked up some of this stuff, and that's actually what the divine mercy thing is about, is that, it's, again, sorrow. We can't have mercy without the sorrow, right? I mean, because we don't understand, the only way we really understand the mercy is through the sorrow for our sin, right? If I'm understanding it correctly, because if we don't have any sorrow for our sin, like we're not sorry for it, the mercy, that there's no understanding of mercy there, right? Because mercy is given when there's sin, right? Mercy is given when there's sin and everything like that. And we don't understand mercy unless we have sorrow. Right? I mean, it just makes sense. I hope that's clear why that would be. I'm not going to try to explain it on the spot because I think it's a little bit abstract. And, I don't want to do what I've done in my other videos, is trying to think of things on the spot. But yeah, so again, you cannot understand mercy. I think you can have mercy without sorrow, but you cannot understand it. And we know that you can have mercy without sorrow because God's been merciful to you for your entire life, even when you weren't sorry. I mean, the fact that you're not in hell right now means that God has had mercy on you, right? Because he's giving you time, that's mercy, right? That's grace. He's giving you time to repent, change your ways. And so, yeah, I was getting too caught up in the aspect of sorrow to the point where I was just like thinking, not even thinking, but having the impression even though I didn't think it was true. But, where I was just like, I don't think Christ really likes me all that much. And, if you ever say that to yourself, just understand, first of all, that that's completely wrong. Christ would not have died. Like, when we say things like that to ourselves, even internally, without recognizing it for what it is, we're actually doing a very bad thing. That's actually called despair. It's a sin. But we're doing a very bad thing. We're not treating Christ correctly when we're doing that. Because that would be to say that Christ doesn't have any mercy. When I say that Christ doesn't love me, he must not love me, I mean, number one, that would be to ignore all of the things that he's done for me. And B, there's like that sort of sin there, it's a sin of unthankfulness. And then B, that would also be to say that Christ has no mercy. And so we're like denying a part of his nature, right? And so we're denying an aspect of his divine nature, which is that merciful aspect. And so that's why it was really beautiful for me to see like that image in my head just keep popping up in my head, that divine mercy image. And I that's something I think I'm going to kind of chase after, not in like a fleshly, worldly sense, sort of foolish kind of sense, but like spiritually, I'm going to look more into this, I think, and try to really embrace the mercy of Christ, because I don't think we can really know Christ that well unless we embrace his mercy. I mean, how could we, right? I mean, if the only way we really can know God, or the first way in which I think we can know God, is through his mercy and his love. Because without his mercy and his love, how could we know him, right? I mean, if we believe that we can know God without his mercy, then we are committing the sin of presumption, right? We're presuming that God does not have any problems with our sin. And so again, there's like this weird sort of like, is it the word dichotomy, this tension that has to be built between like the understanding of sorrow for our sin and then the understanding of his mercy. And I think those two really do go together, because the more we understand his mercy, the more sorrow we're going to have for offending Christ when we sin, offending God when we sin. And the more, do it like that, right? The sorrow and mercy. And the more we understand our sorrow, the more we understand our need for his mercy. But the key aspect there, and this is what I was lacking, is that I thought I didn't have access to that mercy. And then what popped into my head today was a saying I had heard before, and I think it was Christ through one of the saints that said this. I don't know which saint. Could have been Saint Faustina. Said, the greater the sinner, the more his right to access my mercy. The greater his right to access my mercy, or something like that. And that just popped into my head. And I was like, whoa. Because before I was just like, I'm not a good person. And that was really like, I'm like, how can I access this mercy? Like, how can I? I don't deserve it. Obviously, the obvious answer is like, well, mercy is completely undeserved. It wouldn't be mercy if it was deserved. That's called justice, right? Justice is getting what we deserve. Mercy is getting something that we don't really deserve, right? We don't deserve mercy. And so, I just wanted to share that with you. I hope that's helpful for anyone out there. And again, thank you so much for watching my videos, and please like, share, subscribe. There's just one little thing I forgot to add into that video that I was meant to say. One thing I really quickly wanted to add about this entire thing about, that image, it occurred to me that I had been praying to, or asking for prayer, praying through a person called Venerable Anthony Kowalczyk. I believe that's how you say his name. He was a priest in my province from quite a while ago, along, right when the province was getting founded. And so then I realized that I could pray through him, ask him to pray for me. So I'd been doing that, and I'd been asking him to pray for me and my family, and everything like that. And it occurred to me that the reason why I got this image, the reason why I was given this sort of grace, I guess you could call it, this understanding, was actually because he had been praying for me. And so I just wanted to add that in because, and again, I don't know that concretely. I don't know that for sure. It just occurred to me. It was like, yeah, this is what it was. And so I thought that was really interesting. And I wanted to share that because, I want to venerate Venerable Anthony Kowalczyk for doing that for me, right? I want to venerate him for praying for me. And so yeah, I want to honor him in that way, and I needed to add that into the video. And hope to see you next time.